because I want to get to the questions that you all have already posted for this particular year online. And this deals with starting out and meeting faculty members' expectations. And there have been a number of questions, both online and those that have come to me personally, where people have asked, how do you know when a faculty member is pleased with your work? And will they just tell you outright that they're happy, that you've done a good job? But what if they don't tell you? What are the signs? How do you read their faces? Are they saying something else? Are they doing something with their hands, perhaps, that's saying, no, I don't like this? What are some of the signs that maybe you have used, or words that you have used to tell your students that you're pleased with them? Or maybe some things that you've noticed in your colleagues where they have certain signs that they've let them know? Or what about faculty members that don't tell students one way or the other whether or not they're doing a good job, and students just have no idea? They just keep working and working and working, and they're just not even sure. We'll start with whoever would like to tackle this one.
I'm one of those avoidant people. I avoid confrontation. I don't like getting in arguments with my spouse, with my kids, which is one of the reasons I don't also say things like, you have to go to this conference, which is why I say things like, you should think about it, you might want to go. Those are from 1970s psychology. They're called MANDS, M-A-N-D-S. They're basically a command. And it's a style. It's a stylistic thing in a lot of Western Civ, where we do this. We don't want to seem so authoritarian, but they are. And so I try and be very direct with my students. I try and tell them when things aren't working well, and in fact will sometimes need to be less direct. I need to kind of work my way up to it, because when students first get to know me, there is an intimidation factor. I self-describe to my students, I'm like one of those little hyper dogs that barks a lot. But then once you pat it, I don't pee on the floor. It calms down. I like what I do. I think it's fun. I like to be excited about it. But I try and be direct. I think that's really important. And in terms of examples, we don't get a lot of kind of, to use a horrible term because it's not really sound, passive-aggressive behavior in our department. It's there among all people, but usually, at least the folks I know, they'll let you know. They try and soften the blow. No one wants to say, like, this is horrible, because that's just, first off, it isn't. Right? It isn't. There's nothing to, but they don't want to say it really harshly, and so they'll say things like, there's a lot of strengths here. There's a lot of good things. This is really a good start. Those kind of things mean you need more work. And they're trying to do it because too easy when someone criticizes, and this might be their own weakness, when someone criticizes my work, I might take it like not as an affront of my work, but almost sometimes I take it personally. And to make sure that other people don't take that, I never want them to think I'm criticizing them, but it's like, look, this needs some help, this needs some reorganization, it's close, but we have some work to go. And so I don't know if there are no negatives in there, then I am absolutely guilty at saying I'm not satisfied when I'm saying it's a good start, but we have a ways to go. So, sorry.
Please take notes. Thank you.
So I would say that this is another example where good communication comes into play. So if you need positive feedback and the person you're working with is not used to giving a lot of positive feedback, ask for it. Ask for examples of where your advisor thinks that you're doing a good job and where they think that you need improvement. And if you really want the negative, which you should tell them, don't candy coat it. Let me know what really needs to be done to improve this. Because I think there's some of us that I'm also guilty of being one who avoids conflict and who wants to avoid hurting the feelings of my students. And so I will be as gentle as possible in cases where my students probably need to hear a stronger message. And it would be better for them if they told me, look, just level with me. Give me both the good and the bad, and let's go from there and try to improve this work as best we can. But it's up to you, really, to tell your advisor what you need, because we're all different from each other in terms of how we deal with your strengths and weaknesses and how you do your work.
I was going to say, I sort of have 3 levels. I think maybe my students know this. And one thing you can do as grad students is just talk among yourselves and find out what did he or she really mean? Or when your advisor does this, what does that mean? I like to give praise to my students. I really like to tell them when they've done a good job. And I try not to make it meaningless. So when I see something that's well done, even if it's a small thing, I'll give small praise. If it's a big thing, big praise. When I'm in a good mood, which is most of the time, and when I know the students are trying and they're working hard and it's just not coming together, I will not chastise, but sort of have a more lighthearted, humorous kind of approach to, like, what the heck were you thinking when you blew up the lab? I mean, was that really but and the students might be fearful, but hopefully they can see in my face that I'm on their side with it. And that's, I think, where we all want to be, is on your side when things aren't going well. If something didn't get done because the student wasn't working where I think they could, or they just dropped the ball, then I get quiet, and I'll just say, okay, make it right. And I do that because I don't really want to start yelling at students or in a bad way. And I find it's easier for myself just to sort of walk away and let me cool down for a second, then we'll come back and talk about it. And I think the students realize when I don't say anything, that means I'm not real happy. And hopefully that doesn't happen a lot.
Professor Clark, as you start, can you talk a little bit about maybe some nonverbal cues? Because I think that might be helpful as well.
Nonverbal cues. Well, interesting for what my colleagues have said. Being a lawyer, again, I seek conflict, so I love it from that aspect. But it kind of goes back to what was just said here. I'm also a Michigan grad, and so Coach Brady Hoke was asked, how's your defense? And his response was, my kids are working hard. All right, yeah, I mean,
Right.
Again, kind of nonverbal cues on that one is you listen to what's being said, all right? My kids are working hard. That means we suck. Right. I mean, there's just no two ways about it on that. And there's one other aspect. Nonverbal cues, when you get something back, a paper or something like that, take a look at it. Now there's two things here. There's two sides of pride and ownership. I want you to take pride and ownership for when you turn something in, it's a great product. But break, having had everything I have ever written as a lawyer, which gets reviewed by other lawyers, come back total in shreds with red marks all over it, you get past that pride of ownership on it of someone's ripping it apart. It's not they're saying, hey, you're an idiot. They're saying these people are people who are experienced, been doing it for years more than I have, and they're saying, here's how we can make it better because we're going to turn this product into somebody. For my position is going to be to a court, and we want to give the best product forward, which is what your advisors want you to do when you're publishing your work, is to make it the best product possible going forward. So, again, have pride and ownership of what you're doing. Make sure there's no typos. Make sure the numbers are correct. I tell you, I just reviewed something that was, the guy had dropped a footnote to Barack Obama in 2008 as president. And I'm sitting here, I kept going and looking at it, going, God, something told me, I don't think, he wasn't president then yet. He wasn't it was January. I'm like, he wasn't in office yet. Could you please change it? So again, it's just attention to detail for what you're doing. It's kind of like we said, verbal cues. Find the right time also to talk. I mean, if you ask a question and someone's pressed for time or they're kind of quiet, is there a better time where we can discuss this? Is always going to help you out.
What about a student who has a weakness in a particular area? Maybe they're incredibly strong in one area, but in one of the areas that they need for your particular class, there's a weakness and that student's at a disadvantage. Perhaps it's a disability, whether it's a visible disability or an invisible disability. Maybe the undergraduate facilities are not as advanced as the facilities that we have here at UMBC. Maybe they are trying to learn some methods on some of the machines in the lab, but there are postdocs and advanced grad students who are taking up the time and they're not able to have time to learn. How does that student address the weakness or even come to the professor to talk about it?
Again, the aspect is ask what you're doing good and ask what, and again, hey, I do this on an annual basis. I'll say, look, I'm a big boy. So you can go to your professor, look, I'm a big boy, I'm a big girl. give it to me, and don't sugarcoat it. What do I do well? What do I need work on? You know, and you got to be able, because, and again, you got to read relationships, but, you know, most people will respect you for coming and saying, hey, give it to me straight, don't sugarcoat it.
I would say kind of build early. The earlier you can come to me thinking that you might be starting behind the gate, the better we can work it out. And so I want to know. I want to know if you don't have the background allowing you to succeed. I would love it if everyone got an A in my class. That's the way, I mean, that would be fantastic. And if you don't, and I'm not doubting that many students might not have had the background to succeed, or it's been some time since they've, in a stats course, it's been some time since many of the students may have had undergraduate. The earlier the better. I try and put some basic opportunities for students in terms of, you know, undergraduate resources, but unless I hear from you, I have to assume that you're actually doing all right. So that's...
You should go in with the idea that, you know, there's always something that you need to learn better, that you're likely to be not as good at as other students in the class. And like my colleagues here have said, just, you know, go for help and go for help early.